Hi guys, welcome back to The Window, talkSPORT's daily transfer show where we bring you the latest news, rumours and deals from this summer's transfer window. Joining me today is talkSPORT's chief football correspondent, Alex Crook. Crookie, how are you, my man? Everything okay?
Yeah, I'm good. We're on the home straight now, aren't we? This time next week, the transfer window will be closed.
Yeah, I'm sure you are looking forward to some well-earned rest, mate. Well, let's kick it off anyway. We'll start with your club, Manchester United. It was revealed yesterday that youth product Kobbie Mainoo would entertain a move away from his hometown club as Ruben Amorim continues to pick other players ahead of him. Is there any latest in Kobbie Mainoo's future?
Yeah, this was a story we broke on Monday morning, actually, that Kobbie Mainoo would reluctantly explore a move away from Old Trafford in the final week of the window. He was left on the bench again as Manchester United drew at Fulham at the weekend. Hasn't played a single minute in the Premier League. I think I'm right in saying he's only started 15 of Ruben Amorim's games in charge. And Sunday felt like a watershed moment because there was a stage in the second half when Bruno Fernandes and Mason Mount were being deployed as the two number sixes, obviously not their natural positions. And even when Amorim changed that up, it was Manuel Ugarte who was called off the bench and not Kobbie himself. So I think he feels like he just doesn't fit the system that Amorim wants to play, doesn't suit the playing style. Amorim would say that actually when he has played, maybe he's not covered the type of ground that he would want him to. But the Manchester United fan reaction has been pretty unanimous, really pretty united. They want him to stay. They see him as what the club is built on, part of the DNA, bringing through young, homegrown talent. And I think they would be devastated if he was to go. But as I say, Kobbie Mainoo and his advisors are sounding out other clubs. It's not going to be an easy deal to do this late in the window. I don't see that Manchester United would really entertain a loan move because he's not on particularly high wages anyway. That's another part of the problem, that contract negotiations have been stalling for some time. He wants 150 grand a week there or thereabouts. At the moment he earns much less than that as an academy product, so there's almost no point in loaning him out because you're not saving much in wages. I think it would take a substantial offer in order for United to cash in, and if they did sell him for big money, that would go down as pure profit on the balance sheet.
It does seem such a shame, as you said, Crookie. He's made the England squad, was key in that World Cup side under Gareth Southgate. I mean, if Kobbie Mainoo were to leave Manchester United, would they look to bring in a replacement, or is it just too late in the window for that?
Again, it feels a bit late. Obviously, there's been talk of Carlos Baleba. I shot that down pretty early on. I didn't see that Brighton would entertain bids in this window, and that still seems to be the case as we sit here now with less than a week to go. They've been linked with Hulmand, a player obviously that Ruben Amorim knows well from his time at Sporting, and Adam Wharton at Palace as well. But again, two difficult deals to do in the final week of the window, with Palace already losing Ezer and potentially Mark Gay. I think it would take a huge offer to prize Adam Wharton away, and I'm not convinced that actually he's in any hurry to make that move to Old Trafford at this stage of his career. Maybe feels he needs another season playing week in, week out in the Premier League.
Between the sticks at Manchester United, questions still surround Andre Onana, who hasn't featured yet for the Red Devils this season. Is he on the move, or does it look like like he'll stay with the club?
I think he'll stay. I don't think Manchester United are trying to force him out the door. They are trying to bring in competition in the form of Sonny Lammers, Belgium under-21 international. That move seemed quite advanced at the end of last week, but we're still awaiting progress on a deal for him of around about £17 million. Obviously, Altay Bayindir has started the first two games, not covered himself in glory, in my opinion, was at fault for the goal they conceded at home to Arsenal on the opening weekend, and he looked a nervous wreck every time a corner came into the penalty area when I was at Craven Cottage at the weekend. So I do think they need a number two who can really push Andre Onana. But the issue they've got with him is they paid over the odds to sign him from Inter Milan. He's on decent wages. So if they were to let him go now, from a PSR perspective, that would be a really bad look. And if you go back to that transfer window, actually the one where Erik ten Hag was given the reins, Rasmus Højlund hasn't worked out. Mason Mount hasn't really worked out, and Andre Onana for me certainly hasn't worked out. So it looks like quite a costly window for Manchester United.
Yeah, you mentioned that window, the previous window under Erik ten Hag. How are the Manchester United hierarchy and fans looking at this transfer window? They secured the services of Benjamin Sesko, Matheus Cunha and Brian Mbeumo. Are they happy with their window?
I think all of those signings have been greeted positively, both from the fans and from the people who've done the deals. But I think there's a lot of concern amongst the match-going supporters that the squad is still lacking in certain areas. We talked about midfield; they don't really have that enforcer, that number six that all the top clubs in Europe need to be successful. There's obviously big question marks about the goalkeeper as well, and then you've got for me players like Amad Diallo who are being wasted in Ruben Amorim's system as a wing back. You look at the impact he can make higher up the pitch. He's someone who runs at defenders, causes them problems with his pace. He knows where the goal is. He can get plenty of assists as well. And I just think as a right wing back, you're not necessarily getting the best out of him. So I still think 2 games into the season, there's more questions than answers. Cunha has been the pick of the 3 new signings so far. I thought he was exceptional in the first half against Fulham in particular. Sheshko, I think, will take time to adapt to the Premier League, but I would expect him to start not just against Grimsby in the League Cup tonight, live on talkSPORT, but probably at home to Burnley at the weekend. What better opportunity is there than that to get your Premier League career off and running in terms of goals?
Moving on to a London club, Chelsea, they're still very active in the market in terms of outgoings and incomings. We'll start with the latter. Alejandro Garnacho and Xavi Simons any closer to moving to the bridge?
Well, this Simons one has been sort of pending for several weeks now. They've not quite been able to get it over the line. There is interest from other clubs across Europe, but I think his preference is still Stamford Bridge. But I think maybe it hinges on getting players off the wage bill. They've still got to move on, the likes of Ben Chilwell and Raheem Sterling, Axel Disasi, to name just 3. In terms of Garnacho, talks accelerated, I'm told, between Chelsea and Manchester United at the weekend, but there is still a discrepancy in terms of what Manchester United believe Garnacho is worth. They look at the market and they feel £50 million is a reasonable valuation. I think Chelsea would like to get him for a lot less than that, bearing in mind that his relationship with United has completely broken down. I think it will happen, but I'm intrigued to see what the final figure is.
And in terms of outgoings, you briefly mentioned there the sort of so-called bomb squad with the likes of Nicholas Jackson, Raheem Sterling, Jadon Sancho. I mean, are Chelsea realistically going to be able to get loan moves or permanent transfers for these players in the next week?
Yeah, I think we're going to see movement, and the same with those that Manchester United want off their payroll, maybe with the exception of Jadon Sancho, who seems to be stalling whenever a club comes calling for him. But obviously, they've got to shift Anthony, Tyrell Malacia as well. And with Chelsea, I think clubs are waiting. They know they're going to get fairly desperate towards the end of the window. It happened with Raheem Sterling, didn't it, this time last year when Arsenal came in on deadline day, ended up getting him for a minimal loan fee, and Chelsea agreed to pay 80-90% of his wages. I think they might have to do similar. The big club in for him at the moment are Fulham, and they were members of the Chelsea transfer committee, if you like, at Craven Cottage at the weekend. So it wouldn't surprise me if he pitches up with Marco Silva.
Well, another London club that's looking to sort some players and get them out of the door is Arsenal. Jakub Kiwior rumoured to be on the way to FC Porto, with Arsenal looking at Bayer Leverkusen centre-back and left-back Piero Hincapié. Is there any movement on that sort of transfer domino that Arsenal are involved in?
Yeah, all kinds of dominoes across the Premier League in this last week of the window. Kiwior is close, I think. A loan deal initially with a €26 million obligation. There's also bonuses included. Should Porto, as you would expect, qualify for the Champions League next season. Alexander Zinchenko is another player who is looking for a new club, and I think that's where the interest in Hincapié comes in, because, as you say, he can play as a left-sided centre-back, as can Kiwior, but he can play as a left-back and a left wing-back as well. So I think really this is just Mikel Arteta making sure he's got all bases covered after that Arsenal's title challenge was derailed by injury last season. But £52 million, that's the release clause. That is a substantial amount of money for a club who are already the biggest net spenders in the Premier League this summer for what would effectively be a backup defender.
I mean, Crookie, we can't leave without discussing the biggest saga of the window so far. Alexander Isak said to have reiterated his stance that he wants to leave Newcastle. I mean, this has obviously been dragging on all summer. It's like one of those classic transfer sagas like Gareth Bale to Real Madrid. Are there any developments? Will Isak get the dream move he wants?
Nothing definitive. We know there was a meeting between the Newcastle chairman, who rarely attends games, and Isak before that incredible match against Liverpool on Monday night that was obviously full of drama matched only off the field at St James's Park this summer. I still don't think we've heard the last of Liverpool trying to prize Isak away, and I do think it's significant that Newcastle are now willing to spend big money on the likes of Jorgen Strand Larsen, who we're told would be a replacement for Callum Wilson. Well, if they're going to pay in excess of £60 million, as I think the next bid will be, that's quite an expensive replacement for someone who was really only a bit part player, Callum Wilson, for the last couple of years due to injury. They're still in for Johan Wissa as well. Again, I think certain pieces of the puzzle need to fall into place, but I wouldn't like to say definitively, as some have up in the northeast, that Isak will definitely be a Newcastle player come September the 2nd. I just feel there's a twist in this saga still to come.
Well, you mentioned him there, Crookie. Strand Larsen was the hero for Wolves last night, bagging a brace to knock West Ham out. I mean, they're in a world of trouble. But, I mean, has that actually decreased the likelihood of Wolves letting the Norwegian go to Newcastle?
I don't think it was helpful when he comes on and scores 2 goals. It will add an extra couple of £1 million to the transfer fee. The message out of Molineux is quite definitive. Strand Larsen is not for sale in this window. But then you hear Victor Pereira, the manager, who was asked about it after the game by our own Adam Bridge on talkSPORT, and he said, well, every player has their price. So I sense Newcastle will bid again. There's obviously been encouragement from the player side, or you wouldn't have made 2 bids already. I think he is keen to make the move. I'm not saying he's going to do an Isak or a Wissa and go on strike and down tools. But I think if Newcastle can make it happen, then he would be keen. So let's see how high the transfer offer gets and how much they can really test Wolves' resolve. The trouble you've got is that if they do sell Strand Larsen, they've already lost Cunha, Semedo, Aït-Nouri. That's their 4 best players from last season. How do you replace them in the final week of a window? Very difficult.